All right, here we go. So, C.I.B.S, the silent promo killer. What is it? Congruency issues between steps. This is by far where we spend most of our time optimizing with our clients. It doesn't appear to be something that's very intuitive. Well, it is after we start speaking to them about it, but had we not managed their account like we do, a lot of campaigns would just get chopped left and right unnecessarily. So most business owners, really, and marketers as a whole, look at their promotion as one singular promotion or a traffic source as one singular traffic source, and they lump the entire result into one big thing. And if it flops, many will start randomly changing parts, like just based on a hunch, a little bit here, a little bit there, or they have a feeling they should change this, when they could be following the process that I'm about to show you. I actually have a client who on the marketing side, actually I'll say he's a business associate on the marketing side, who he's been trying for years to get something off the ground, and he can't seem to do it because every time he launches it, it doesn't work the way he wants it to, and then he just throws the whole thing out. But chances are there's just tiny little changes he could make along the process that would get him the results that he's looking for. And in my experience, this boils down to what most business owners and marketers just don't fully understand. They don't have one promotion. They have a series of promotions broken down into steps. And each step is a mini promotion or a mini sale. So have you ever had buyer's remorse? You ever bought something and then afterwards you're like, I wish I didn't do that. And you thought you were getting one thing and then shortly thereafter you got something totally different. Like, how does that make you feel? I'm imagining not very good. So one of your many jobs that you have as a marketer is to have as many congruent and positive transactions with the prospect before asking them for their money. So let's start by walking you through what I mean by congruent. All right, so congruent. Basically, as I'm using it, simply means, so this is not the geometry, which is another use of the term, but it simply means the uniformity of consistency of something. And what we're talking about here is the messaging. So there's two types of congruency issues that you need to worry about right now in these market conditions. Number one are congruency issues that cause confusion. And number two are congruency issues that challenge the prospect's belief system. Number one makes them feel like they're in the wrong place. Number two makes them want to kick your dog. By the way, when you see a little handwriting note person up there, that means that this might be something you want to jot down. It ties to what I'm talking about later, and I am going to go through it relatively quickly. You might have to watch it again if you miss something. So if you make someone feel like they're in the wrong place, they're just going to be confused. And the confused mind says, no, you've probably heard that before. And when you're paying for advertising and moving prospects along the sales pipeline, if you confuse them, it makes them feel like they're in the wrong place. And all they're going to do, they're going to simply leave, and you've lost any potential for a sale, at least at that moment. There are much larger, longer lasting consequences when you're not congruent with the prospect's belief system. And because we're in an investing niche, which is tied to someone's money, which is basically tied to their survival, there could be long-lasting consequences to not being in alignment with their belief system. I'm going to give you a pretty interesting case study of that in the next chapter. Excuse me. So just think about dating, right? So what's important long-term? You have to be on the same page in certain areas that are probably non-negotiable, like religion, finances, political views. Those all come to mind. There's some other things come to mind, but they're not really appropriate for this presentation. So if you were to tell, for example, a prospect who is on your page that their God isn't real, first off, don't do that. You think they're going to buy from you? No way. They're fighting words. Also, if you were to tell like your neighbor who loves Biden that you just can't wait for Trump to win the 2024 election so he'll keep all the illegals out, do you think they're going to be more or less likely to invite you over for dinner? I'm guessing less likely. So, what do you think is going to happen when you tell a prospect who believes that we are currently at the beginning of a massive recession or massive depression, that opportunities are just everywhere? Opportunities are abound. Risk is low, and they should buy your service and invest where you invest. They're probably going to think you're a charlatan. You're selling snake oil. This is one of the many reasons marketing may have become more challenging for you lately. So when we were in a 9-year, 10-year, 11-year bull market, however long that thing lasted, you're pretty safe going with the greed angle because 80 to 90% of the prospects coming onto your page are high on hope and will likely agree or be open to your optimism. So you're risking turning away 10%, 20% of your potential customers for the benefit of speaking to the belief system of the other 80 to 90%. But in today's uncertain market conditions, you're rolling the dice big time and risking alienating a huge percentage of your audience. So to recap, there are two main areas related to congruent messaging that your copy team needs to consider. One, that the marketing on the next step makes them feel like they're in the right place based on what they saw on the previous step. And two, that they figure out how to pull the largest amounts of prospects into their sales process while pushing the least amount of prospects out by challenging their belief system. All right, this is the first concept. Hopefully you all followed along. Let's keep going. Microsale via congruent and positive transactions. So let me start by asking you a question. Would you agree that it's typically easier to sell something to someone you have sold to in the past, as long as they've had a good experience? All right, answers are rolling in. Just kidding, it's not live. All right, so if you answered no, there's a good chance you should just skip the rest of this presentation and go to the next module. If you answered yes, then not only are you correct, but then I'm sure you're going to agree that the rest of what I'm going to show you is true. All right, so if we agree that it's easier to sell someone who had a positive experience purchasing from you in the past, then typically the more micro sales you have in a row, which are just little sales, the more likely the prospect will be to follow through and perform the final step, which of course is collecting their money, making the sale, all right? And I'd argue that the real sale happens after they buy, when you fulfill on your promise and they've become a happy customer and they don't refund. A lot of people have a refund problem because they think the selling happens after they've made that transaction. We're going to talk about that in a few modules later. So remember, when I'm saying that each step in your campaign has to be a positive transaction, each step is a micro sale. So if you're successful at selling them on the next step without causing buyer's remorse between steps, said differently, congruency issues, your prospects will turn into a buyer at a dramatically higher rate. All right? So here's what I mean specifically by as many congruent and positive transactions with the prospect before asking them for their money. So when you're looking at a marketing campaign going from left to right, can you imagine launching something and you pay for ads and you drive them from the ad to the checkout page? No marketing in between, just like put your money in here. Don't worry, I told you what this was all about on the ad. Could you imagine doing that? No. It's a failure. That would not work. Well, maybe it would work, but it's highly unlikely that it's going to work. It goes against all modern marketing practices. So here's another example of two steps, right? There's two steps in the process. So the marketing goes from the ad to a long form sales letter and then to the checkout. Pretty common, a little old school, but it does in fact work, right? An evolution of that then, I don't know when the whole video sales letter thing started, like maybe 10 years ago. 3 steps, right? You go from an ad that could be, by the way, I'm saying ad, it could be email, it could be one of our Darwin custom offer units, it could be anything, whatever you're paying for the click on, to now the video sales letter, the VSL, to an exit pop with a transcript option, and both the VSL and the transcript go to the checkout. I think you'll all agree that we're progressively getting more sophisticated, and also there are more steps involved. I don't know if you've thought about it like that before, but that's actually what's happening. You're having more steps involved in between the click of the ad, getting them to the checkout page. And you can imagine a 4-step marketing process: ad to VSL to exit pop with the transcript option. And then they go, of course, both the VSL and the transcript go to the checkout, and then with the 2-step checkout strategy added to the end. So what's this designed to do? Shopping cart abandonment might be 80, 85%. They go to the page and they bounce. So with the 2-step checkout, they're able to just say, hey, step 1 is name, email, phone number, and then proceed to step 2. And when they get to step 2, it's just another step, but it's the final step typically. All right, so we're adding another step there. And here, hypothetically, 5-step marketing process. Now we're adding some sort of a lead magnet to the front, like a report opt-in, or you're actually having them opt in to watch the video sales letter. So report opt-in to VSL, to exit pop, blah, 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 blah. Everything right there. So what's actually happening here is each step is a micro sale. So if you screw up the message, if you screw up the congruency specifically in any of these steps, it can be devastating to your promo, right? And I think we'll all agree that this is not the way to market your business. Add to checkout page, right? And that's because there aren't enough steps in between where you're getting their attention to where you're actually asking them for money. It goes much deeper than that, but if you boil it down and you think of everything from left to right, steps from left to right, from when you're having your first click all the way through, and if you're looking at a promo that isn't working and you do what I'm about to teach you, I don't know, 8 times out of 10, unless the entire promo truly has a major, major issue, it's like, not a good product, not a good brand name, doesn't actually work, for example, not great for these market conditions. If you rule out all the big obvious stuff, most of the time it's something really small, right? Alrighty, so we talked about congruent messaging. We talked about micro sales via congruent and positive transactions. Now we're going to talk about how to prevent or solve C.I.B.S. so you don't have to deal with it. So this next section will pull it all together for you and give you a process that you can use to prevent C.I.B.S. in the first place or solve C.I.B.S. if it happens to your promo. The process has 2 sections, pre-launch and post-launch. So we should start with pre-launch. I'm going to bring you back to the beginning of this module when I said most business owners look at their promotion as one promotion. They don't have one promotion, they have a series of promotions broken down into steps. And each step is a mini promotion or a mini sale. When the promo isn't broken down into individual steps and when each step doesn't have a forecasted target, then any promo having more than one step will quickly put the marketer into a state of disorientation. And so, pre-launch step 1 is map out each step in the marketing campaign into a spreadsheet along with the specific conversion rate targets. And you have to input industry averages. If you don't know the industry averages, I'm not going to be able to cover that with you today. Ask someone, or next time we're on a call, ask me. Step 2, walk through each step prior to launch and ask yourself the following questions. Before I move on, walk through each step. So what are we talking about here? Maybe you're doing an email drop. So you have email to opt-in page. That's step 1. Opt-in page to video sales letter. That's step 2. Video sales letter to exit pop transcript. That's like 2.5-ish, because whether they click that and go to the long form sales letter or actually follow through to the checkout page, that's going to be step 3. And then so on and so forth. And this all makes sense in just a second. I know you know it. I know you know what a spreadsheet is, and I know what you mean. I know you know what it means to map stuff out. But it's amazing to me how rarely I see this put into action. Right. So here are the questions to ask yourself on each step. 1, and you got to write these down. Am I being clear and direct with what I want the prospect to do next and what they will see on the next page, or am I beating around the bush? This is really common with copywriters where, they're under a lot of pressure to perform, create something new, et cetera, et cetera. They don't want to go with the obvious because the obvious might be too direct. They don't want to be too far out. But typically they lean towards too far out and they tap dance around what they're actually trying to say. And the reason they're doing that is for good reasons, because it's hard to write about the same thing over and over and over again if you're point on a promo for 6 months or a year and make it sound different. But the reality is the result of not being direct enough and beating around the bush is going to be confusion. So when they're talking about something 2 steps away from the main point, maybe it's in the presentation somewhere downstream, but it's not on the very next page. That right there kills more media buys than basically anything. Just, not enough thought put into the congruency between the first step and then the first click and that very next step. And this is usually a really easy fix. All right, number 2, when you go to the next step, you have to stop and look at every next step and say, did I fulfill on the promise from the previous step? This is an easy one to screw up because we're also used to saying, get someone to opt in and then show them an offer. Get someone to opt in and then show them an offer. But if it's not congruent, if it doesn't make sense, if they feel like they're in the wrong place, they're just going to leave, right? So there's lots of examples of this. I'm sure you could list them yourself. Number 3, did I switch deliverables abruptly? This is so common. So opt in for this report that's, whatever. Opt in for this report and then you bring them to a webinar opt-in page. Super, super common. Opt in for this report and then you bring them over to a video sales letter and you expect them to have 30 minutes to sit there and watch, right? So did you switch the deliverables abruptly? Not that it's wrong to switch deliverables, but you have to add transitional language into there or else they're going to feel like they're in the wrong place and they're going to leave. Number 4, did I alienate anyone by going against their belief system? And if so, was it on purpose? So I have a good buddy in this niche and you either love him or hate him. He's very right-leaning, very polarizing, and he wouldn't have it any other way. It's intentional and done right. It is a very powerful strategy, but there are many pitfalls to getting this wrong. And if you're not intentionally trying to alienate people, then you really shouldn't do it because you're going to be poking at them at their core. So if you're trying to do that on purpose, got it. If it's unintentional, you need to rethink that. And you have to have some sort of a plan. Actually, I have a plan for you. I'll show it in a little bit that'll help you with this if you struggle with it. And number 5, do my steps build upon the original message or do I change the message or topic abruptly without a transition? But you have to stick to whatever that immediate message is. And a message isn't necessarily just one thing. It could have multiple components to it. But if you are bringing them from one step to the next and you start off, for example, by talking about a cash flow strategy and then you bring them to a service that's talking about making big wins every once in a while, it's going to be a total disconnect and you're just going to lose them. So in the pre-launch phase, when you have all of your marketing done, before you start throwing money at it, you really need to go through this process, walk through every step, every single step, and ask yourselves these questions. And if you get stuck on any of them and you feel like you've answered incorrectly, you really do need to spend more time on that component and make it match and make it be congruent before moving on to your media buying component. Alrighty, let's keep going. All right, everyone, hopefully you've been getting value out of this and taking notes and you're following along with me. We are coming to the end of this particular module and I'm going to tie it all together, hopefully. You've heard me say multiple times that most clients think of their campaign as one campaign. I'm not saying all clients, but most clients come to us and they'll have like a singular goal, CPA of cost per acquisition target of $300 or more, maybe it's an ROI goal or whatever. Now, if we didn't manage clients the way that we did and we didn't have our own performance spreadsheet and sort of force the process, say we rolled the campaign out and achieved a $480 CPA, they'd be like, all right, that's it, I'm going to move on. Or maybe they give it another test and that doesn't work. And they'll say that there's something wrong with the traffic source. That doesn't happen that much because of our process. But maybe they take that same offer and they roll it out to other traffic sources and they're all getting $480, $500, $600 CPAs. Well, at some point they're going to throw the campaign out. And my whole position on this is it's probably not necessary if they were to take a moment. And if you remember back at the beginning of part 1 or a pre-launch rather, I said that you have to put down your success metrics, your target, and then list out every single step in your campaign and list the target conversion rates based on industry averages. So these are just targets, right? Now, what this isn't looking at is the creative. This is just looking at the numbers, but the numbers back into the creatives. The numbers tell us which creatives we need to look at or which steps we need to look at. So in this particular hypothetical situation, they need a $300 CPA on a $10,000 buy. That'd be about 33 units sold. Their target CPC is $350, which should generate 2857 clicks. They have a target report opt-in rate of 40%, video sales editor conversion rate of industry average 1.5%, funnel follow-up conversion rate of 1.5%. And if everything worked exactly like this, they'd have 34 sales. Believe it or not, most businesses that we work with do not come prepared with this information, and we have to actually create it for them. So now you see what I mean by you have to have everything lined up, mapped out, and you have to have the industry average conversion rates. Because you know what? It's not going to do you any good if you're like, yeah, I need to be at 33 units, but I have to have a 75% report opt-in rate and a 5% video sales letter conversion rate. I mean, maybe you'll achieve that, but it's putting too much pressure on the campaign to perform at like, hyper optimal levels. So you really have to have the industry average part down. Okay, so now we're to post-launch. So you've launched the campaign and it's not doing as great as you want it to, right? So step one, you open the spreadsheet that you created before launching and review your forecasted conversion rates for each step. I just showed you what that looks like. And here it is again. Step two, fill out the actual results achieved for each step and look for the drop-off. All right, so here's a sample of what the actual results look like in this hypothetical situation. So I could see if I'm coming down here, we have a $480 CPA, so that's not great. Our target is $300, so I just start working backwards. All right, well, the follow-up funnel sales got a 3% conversion rate. That's not the problem. The VSL got a 2% conversion rate. That's not the problem. Wait a minute, report opt-in 25%. Our target was 40%, and we got a 25%, as you can see here. So that's probably the problem, right? Maybe. So first thing you're going to want to do is make sure it's not a technical issue. Believe it or not, it happens. So you might have a period of time or a permanent delay in the redirect that causes people to just say, you know what, I'm out of here. You might have a tracking link issue, which creates an attribution issue where all of a sudden you're not able to track any of the actions. So it happens a lot. There's a lot of moving parts in these marketing campaigns and these automated marketing funnels specifically. So it does happen, and that's a really good place to start. Just make sure everything's working properly. And then step four, if it isn't a technical issue, the very next thing you should do is run through the drop-off, look at the drop-off, and run through the steps that I showed you in pre-launch again and re-ask yourself every single one of those questions. You've ruled out technical issues. Now you need to rule out message congruency issues. And remember, there's two different types of congruencies, issues that you need to be watching out for right now. There is just confusion. They feel like they're in the wrong place. And there's congruency issues where you are challenging their belief system. And that really comes down to the overall messaging right now. And it's a slippery slope with this topic, but it does come down to fear and greed, or fear or greed. So that, as I talked about at length before, is something you really need to be sensitive to. So it's not just the confusion. Does the first step, do I fulfill the promise on the second step? Do they feel like they're in the right place? You also have to come to terms with the fact that we're in different market conditions right now, and it might be the overall angle of the offer, right? So you could just change the report opt-in rate, right? Wrong. The other thing I noticed in this hypothetical situation is that the CPC is at $6 that you achieved, and you were targeting a $3.50. Now, why would that happen? Well, it wouldn't happen here because at Darwin, we have a guaranteed cost per click. So you're going to know what your click is going into it. And on top of it, they're only going to be human clicks because we have a zero bot guarantee. We have in-house technology that filters out all the bots. And so with us, that's not going to be a variable, but there are tons of great traffic sources out there where that will be a variable. And it's a variable that you're going to have to manage. So the fact that you have a 25% report opt-in rate here, I noticed that, but the fact that we're at a $6 cost per click when it wasn't guaranteed makes me realize that I have to actually go right up to the beginning. So if you're in an ad network that is charging based on some sort of bidding system, that's going to back into some sort of CPM of their own. And they're going to be ranking it based on what your click rate is. That makes them the most amount of money. Now, if your ad's too clicky, your cost per click is going to be really low, but your report opt-in page is going to be even worse than it is in this particular example. Now, if it's not clicky enough, it's super targeted. It's like, hey, would you like to buy a newsletter today? Click here. Like, you might have a 100% conversion rate on that sort of thing, but you get no traffic. Then your cost per click is going to be really high and it's not very effective. So you have to do something in between. So you have to start actually up at the ad itself, and you go right back to the pre-launch questions and roll through it right from the beginning. Again, you've ruled out technical issues. You have to start now assuming that it has something to do with congruency, especially if you have history of this promo somewhere else and you have some new ads in place. You have to start there. If you're testing new traffic sources, the more things you're testing, the more complex this gets. The more variables you have to manage, the more seemingly impossible it will be to optimize a campaign if you're thinking of it as one campaign and you're not breaking it down to the individual steps. So again, in this particular hypothetical situation, even though this looks like the problem right here, because these certainly are not the problem, the actual problem is likely up in the ad itself and could be a combination of the ad and then is it congruent with the opt-in page, or it could just be the ad itself. Regardless, you have to walk through the entire process again. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Whew, that was a lot. So C.I.B.S, hopefully you were able to follow along with me here. And for those of you who are expert marketers that are listening to this, maybe you're like, yeah, that's kind of what I do anyway, and that's great. But there's a lot of businesses, I'd say the majority of the businesses that I'm making this for right now are not, they don't have it nailed yet. And this is my process for getting to the bottom of what is wrong. In fact, I've been following this process, I don't know, probably for about 10 years. And I didn't even map it out until recently. And the only reason is because we're growing, we're hiring, and I'm having to delegate the optimization process off to other team members. And so I had to put it into an understandable, transferable method where I could be like, all right, in my absence, this is what you do. So I hope this was helpful for you. If it was over your head, I apologize. If it was like child's play, I apologize, but hopefully I hit the sweet spot for a lot of you. What's coming up next is something I'm really excited about. To scare or not to scare. We had a really great run where the answer was it didn't really matter. Now it really does. And as I said before, if you get it wrong, there are some real consequences there, and they're deep-rooted consequences. So my objective here is to show you a little bit of data that I just pulled up, get you to think about a few things, and of course, provide you with a solution that will help you early 2023 test some new things and hopefully change the way that you're marketing a little bit. All right, let's get to it.